Saying that Mk.gee is making waves in music would be an understatement. His guitar skills and guitar tone have been talked about a lot online, across articles, forums, and some amazing YouTube videos. But we are at risk of distilling Mk.gee down to just an amazing guitarist. He's an amazing artist too, and I don't think that gets spoken about enough. And I promise by the end of this video, you'll have a whole new perspective on Mk.gee's music and your own music creation in general. And if you don't gain something from this video, you can come to my house and take everything I own. That's how confident I am. Why am I so confident? Because the core of Mk.gee's creativity is nothing to do with guitar, and that creativity can be applied to any genre. And all this information is actually coming from Mk.gee himself. People have just overlooked what he said. So let me prove to you that Mk.gee is more than a guitar hero, and that he's pop music's Picasso. In order to do that, we need to understand Mk.gee through a few simple points, starting with number 1, liminal space. If you don't know what that is, I'll let Mk.gee explain.
Explain what you mean by the word liminal in relation to this music.
Yeah, I mean the whole record was, it was kind of a challenge to myself. I wanted it to feel like something so recognizable, but at the same time there is no possible way that there's anything out like this today.
I'd highly recommend checking out that Radio 1 interview. It is absolute gold. But more importantly, why is it interesting? Instead of Mk.gee making a sad song or a song in a specific genre, he is tapping into a zone that exists between the lines. Something that feels familiar but difficult to place, and there is magic in that blurriness. Liminal space is probably best explained with the famous images. They have a sense of familiarity, as if you've been there before, but you definitely haven't. There's a blend of confusion and nostalgia, among other emotions. But ultimately, whatever it makes you feel, it's a deep and complicated emotion. Using a visual concept like this to create music is genius, but it's not the Picasso connection. That's coming soon. Before that, we need to work out how to harness liminal space in our own music. And for that, we need to look at number 2, influences. So if Mk.gee's concept is to make music that sounds like you've heard it before, but deconstructed and extrapolated out into its own art form, he needs source material. And what Mk.gee primarily chose is 80s music. Let's take D&M for example. That's essentially a Prince song. Is it exactly the same as any specific Prince song? No, but it's definitely inspired by Prince, and that's the whole idea of liminal space. A guy on Mk.gee's Reddit wrote a list of Prince songs to compare to Mk.gee, of which I definitely recommend checking out Private Joy. It even has melodic similarities to Candy. I can also hear a lot of influence from The Police. My dad played the Greatest Hits album a lot when I was a kid, so I checked there first and noticed this. In order to compare So Lonely and Are You Looking Up, I put both songs into LANDR stems and simply drag and drop the separated audio into my session, meaning I could compare the songs without vocals, and you can really hear that shared DNA. But I will state, in my opinion, it's definitely not a rip-off, it's just inspired by. I showed it to a friend and he said, why don't you try putting reggae drums underneath the Mk.gee song to see how it sounds. And look at that, LANDR Stems has allowed me to make a Mk.gee reggae remix. LANDR have kindly sponsored this video and are offering 20% off regular price for anyone who uses the link in the description. It uses AudioShake's award-winning AI algorithm, which explains why it's the highest quality stem splitter I've tried. Big shout out to LANDR. I Want also feels reminiscent of Every Breath You Take. I sped up I Want to match the same tempo as Every Breath You Take, and then used LANDR stems to get the Police vocal and layer it on top. Every breath you take, and every move you make. It's so interesting hearing the two songs together like that. Another artist you probably haven't heard of is the Blue Nile, and Mk.gee has said on his NTS show it's one of his favourite bands of all time. So let's listen to Elysis and then I'll compare. Did you notice that wasn't Elysis as you know it? That's Elysis with these industrial metallic drums from a Blue Nile song layered in. I would recommend checking out both of these albums. They really set the tone and tempo for what Mk.gee does. Mk.gee is also a self-professed jazz kid and cites Pat Metheny as a big influence. You can definitely hear a guitar style similarity with tracks like this. It's not the same at all, but once again, it has that familiarity. Ask yourself how you can reference your musical heroes in the same fashion, and I'm sure you'll break new ground in your music. The next point is a thing called spirit, and this concept is dynamite. Mk.gee has musical influences like I spoke about, but what about the idea of a spiritual influence? Mk.gee cites Sinead O'Connor as having pop spirit, without the music being outright identifiable as pop. which is interesting because Mk.gee makes left field music, but there's a pop sensibility that Mk.gee's music lives and breathes. How else would he end up on SNL standing next to Bill Burr? Kurt Cobain is the best example of this I can think of. He made heavy guitar music with pop structure and pop sensibilities, and it's well documented that Kurt was a big fan of ABBA. That pop spirit made Nirvana's music accessible to the masses, whereas a lot of other grunge acts didn't find that same accessibility. So to summarize, influences is channeling your favorite artists directly into your music, and spirit in this context is like channeling the whole genre without the end product being necessarily identifiable as that genre. Mk.gee also talks about the Flaming Lips and their album The Soft Bulletin because it's a rock record without feeling rock. In fact, Mk.gee talks about spirit so much that he mentioned it 30 times in this Dazed article. It's well worth a read. Now let's play a game. I believe I have a great example of Mk.gee channeling 80s pop. Let's see if you can guess it from these clues. Mk.gee is from New Jersey. He says growing up he was influenced a lot by Jersey rock. Bon Jovi are from New Jersey. Therefore, living on a prayer. I've used LANDR stems again to isolate the melodic elements on Candy and Bon Jovi. Tell me that 80s pop sound hasn't filtered into Mk.gee's music, I dare you. Side note, I've been asked the same question over and over for years. Do I give private lessons / coaching? And finally I can say yes. One-to-one video calls are now available on my website, so let's get working on your production, mixing, or just general music advice. Thanks for the patience, everybody. Now let's talk about production. This is the good stuff, so get ready. Phil Collins has played a big part in Mk.gee's production style. If you don't know, Phil Collins created a drum sound called gated reverb, and it defined the 80s and sounded like this. To recreate it, I grabbed a nice kick and snare from my sample pack, and then simply added a big room reverb that cuts off using a gate instead of fading out naturally, allowing the drums to be punchy and reverb drenched at the same time. Prince loved this sound, but his version was slightly different. He used the LM1 drum machine pitched down, compressed, and added flange. But he liked non-linear reverb, which essentially gets bigger as it continues, which makes it sound like a whip. That's where Mk.gee comes in. I think he's replicating Prince's drum sound, but swapping out the LANDR for live drum sounds. This makes it feel familiar because of the processing, but different because of the drum sounds, helping to achieve that liminal space familiarity. Thankfully, I've got some drums in my sample pack that fit the Mk.gee vibe pretty well, and allowed me to recreate the D&M drums. Mk.gee's kick in this song is also weirdly wide with sub information, so I played with stereo width and sub boosting to achieve that effect. I also added some cassette noise from my pack, because all of Mk.gee's songs are drenched in beautiful tape noise. Also, there's this free plugin called Magic 7, which has some great non-linear reverb settings. It's also important to note that Mk.gee uses the Alesis Quad Reverb, and that processor has reverse reverb and a reverb gate, so we can say with almost complete confidence that that's where Mk.gee gets his non-linear reverb from. If you've never played with gated reverb, try it ASAP. The Phil Collins and Prince methods are both a lot of fun. Another artist to influence Mk.gee's production is the amazing John Martin. John made the Echoplex famous by creating beautiful cascading delays with his guitar. And if we look at Mk.gee's pedal board, we see the Bell Epoch that emulates the Echoplex, which John mastered and always had by his side for those special moments, just like Mk.gee. But the big overlap between Mk.gee and John Martin is their use of atmosphere texture. 2-Star is littered with these moments of atmosphere, such as the train going past and Are You Looking Up, the kids laughing at the start of Break the Spell, and so much more. John was doing this in 1977 with his song Small Hours. They set up amps on one side of a lake in the countryside and set up mics on the other side, which captured the sound of nature with the movement of water and wildlife noises, and it is absolutely incredible. Please listen to the full track. It literally changed how I see music, and hopefully it does the same for you. Much like Mk.gee, I started layering atmosphere textures into tracks and played with manipulating them to create otherworldly vibes. It is so much fun. Check out the atmosphere folder in my Sonic Texture sample pack, or try creating your own. Either way, dive in and you'll see how much life it brings to your tracks. This next technique is awesome, you're gonna love it. On 2-star, there are so many moments that sound underwater and lo-fi. To me, it sounded like low quality MP3 processing, which I have proved is true. Mk.gee said in this interview that he listened to a lot of crappy MP3s of his favourite songs growing up, and he likes that 12-bit underwater sound. You can hear it on the Nulo synths, the background vocals on How Many Miles, and so much more, but my favourite is Dream Police. The start sounds to me like someone outside slamming a car door closed and then processed with the low quality MP3 sound. So I recreated it. I used LANDR stems to isolate the music without the drums, added a car door closing in a drum pattern, then Leslie codec, which is free, which degrades the sound with internet compression algorithms, some atmosphere texture filtered and degraded, and some mechanical texture with tape noise. And honestly, I feel like I've proved that's how it was done. Even the car door, which I love, it's definitely cool and experimental. Which brings me to Picasso, and a big warning for all Mk.gee fans. Picasso painted this when he was 15 years old. But later in life, this was his painting style. And Picasso has been quoted as saying, "It took me 4 years to paint like Raphael, but a lifetime to paint like a child." Which correlates directly to Mk.gee. He has spoken quite extensively about his piano teacher that was meant to be teaching him classical music, but young Mike wanted to play chord progressions from his favourite pop songs, which his piano teacher allowed, meaning he was able to master those pop standards. Mk.gee then built on this foundational knowledge of pop music by indulging in experimental guitar playing and gritty production, which created the Mk.gee sound we know today. And I realised this during a one-to-one Zoom call with a student. He had made a sick track in this Mk.gee Dijon vibe, with lots of noise and raw sharp corners. It was great, but it wasn't quite there yet. The execution needed some work, and that just comes with time invested, because without the experience it can come off as amateur. It's like dancing in the dirt and grime and coming out covered in stains. Mk.gee can dance in the dirt and grime and come out shining, and I feel like there is no better example than Are You Looking Up. The mix is so clunky sounding, somehow it's muddy and thin at the same time, but instead of sounding amateur, it sounds otherworldly. In the same way it took Picasso years to paint like a child, it takes a long time to develop the skills to dance in the musical dirt and grime and come out shining. Does that make sense? Hopefully. But the most important part of this whole video is this. A lot of people are trying to copy Mk.gee because he's a generational talent, which is totally understandable. But copying him like a shadow is sadly not going to make you a generational artist too. So what do you do instead? You take liminal space, influences, spirit, production, and you add your own voice of who you are. Mk.gee and Dijon are pushing raw emotional performances that aren't locked to a grid and perfectly quantized, topped off with dirty rule-breaking production, and you can still be a part of that with your own voice. I think that's the future of music right now, and something we can all be a part of in any genre. Imagine 90s R&B through the lens of liminal space and raw emotional production. SWV vocal stacks drenched in tape noise, recorded in the hallway of your house instead of a fancy studio. New jack swing drums with real instruments instead of sampled orchestra hits. The possibilities are endless. This video took 4 months to make, so if you enjoyed, please show some love. Book a one-to-one session, check out my sample pack, or watch my Dijon video. If you liked this video, then you'll probably like that one too. And obviously, subscribe if you've got this far into the video. Thanks for watching.